What's going on, everybody? It's Ty the TV Guy, and I'm back with a video today comparing the two Vince Gilligan creations, Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, and determining which show is better in my view. Now, of course, since Better Call Saul wrapped up a couple years ago, this discussion can now come having both full bodies of work at our disposal. And for me, though I do think the shows are very similar in quality, for my personal enjoyment, there is one that I like a decent amount better. I think they're both top 10 shows of mine all time. Probably maybe both in my top 5. I mean, they truly are two of the best shows you're ever going to see. But there's one that I just think is a little better overall. Before I get a little further into breaking down the specific elements of these shows, make sure to like this video if you love Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad, and subscribe to my channel for more content about these shows and others. But back to this discussion. Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad definitely have two different vibes, though they exist within the same universe with some of the same characters. Breaking Bad is definitely more focused on action and intense storylines throughout, whereas Better Call Saul is more character-driven. Now, that's not to say that the characters in Breaking Bad aren't very impressive and that you don't dive really deep into them and their psyches, because of course you do. That's part of what makes Breaking Bad great as well. But Better Call Saul almost kind of builds its whole plot through its characters, whereas the way Breaking Bad is kind of wired, the characters react to things within the plot, and based on the decisions they make because of the circumstances, that's kind of how you judge them. Whereas in Better Call Saul, you're deep diving into the characters and their relationships early on, and then that unfolds into the events later on in the show, if that makes sense. So I feel like they kind of approach the characters in opposite ways. And of course, in both, you're going to get, some pretty significant character details and character development. But I just think the method in which they do it is different, and it's more like character-centric in Better Call Saul. So which show you like better could largely come down to how you prefer to view these types of things, as a viewer. Do you, kind of like sitting with the characters and slowly unraveling things about them over time, like you're going to get in Better Call Saul? Or do you like a lot of action while still growing with the characters and learning more about them through, uncovering through the writing, but also just through their actions and the events of the show, which is more the approach of Breaking Bad? For me, I'm really open to anything, and the fact that Better Call Saul opens a lot more slowly than Breaking Bad doesn't necessarily turn me off of the show. I will say that after 2 seasons of Better Call Saul, and it still felt a little stagnant, I was like, okay, this has to pick up here soon. And sure enough, in season 3, I think it really does. But I mean, Breaking Bad, really just from a couple episodes in, there's so much action. It feels like climactic moment after climactic moment, and certainly makes for, I think, a more exciting viewing experience. That doesn't necessarily mean that in all areas it's technically better. So I'm going to break down some of the categories and groupings we can make based on different elements in TV shows. First category I want to look into is cinematography. And of course, Vince Gilligan is the mastermind behind both of these shows. So there's going to be a lot of similarities with things like cinematography and writing. But I do think the cinematography is more impressive and more fleshed out in Better Call Saul. One element that Breaking Bad did such a good job with, capturing the eyes of the audience, is its cinematography, its unique shots. There's shots of Walt opening up, a box of money, and you're, the perspective of the box is the camera, looking up at Walt, digging into the money. Certain shots, how they shot the scene with him yelling at Skyler, "Where is the money?" At the end of season 4. That was a really crazy shot as well. So there's super impressive cinematography in Breaking Bad, don't get me wrong. And yes, it is very similar from show to show, being that the creator is the same. But I do think they got a bit more creative and just implemented a lot more of these crazy good shots in Better Call Saul. And even aside from what I'm about to say, if it was about even, I really love how they brought in the black and white in Better Call Saul, and how the last couple episodes it was all black and white. And what that signified for Jimmy's journey and his downfall. I thought that was, poetic, the way that was put together through the writing and the cinematography, and just the choice to make that all black and white with the Gene Takovich character near the end of the show. And also how at the beginning of every season, they'd show us that little flash of black and white and, him working in the Cinnabon or him doing something else in the future and kind of foreshadowing that all throughout the show. It's kind of like watching back through it. It's like they're giving you hints. They're kind of showing you what he's going to become. And the whole show, you're watching his slow downfall to that point. It makes it like more depressing, I think, following his journey upon rewatch. So I think the cinematography in Better Call Saul has more of a bearing on what actually goes on in the show. So that's why I think it's a little more significant, a little more impactful, and just better, I would say. As for the characters, it's really close, and you really can't go wrong. I mean, both of these shows have great characters, but I am going to go with Breaking Bad. I think my two favorite characters from this whole universe are Jesse Pinkman and Walter White, and they are both almost exclusively in Breaking Bad. They both make a little appearance at the very end of Better Call Saul, but they are Breaking Bad characters. And don't get me wrong, Saul is incredible. The acting by Bob Odenkirk is amazing, just as I think it was in Breaking Bad, but, he even stepped it up a level as this character, as we dig deeper into this character in Better Call Saul. And all the other acting in Better Call Saul is absolutely spectacular as well. It really doesn't have a lot to do with the acting, because I feel like you're getting, top tier casting that leads to great acting in both shows. I think the most impressive performance in the whole Breaking Bad universe is Bryan Cranston as Walter White. But, Bob Odenkirk with Saul Goodman is right there. It's neck and neck. But to me, the acting is really a wash because it's so high quality in both shows. So then it just goes down to personal preference and what characters I connect with the most. And of anyone in this universe, it's definitely Jesse Pinkman. I connect with his struggles so much. And honestly, I think Better Call Saul's version of Jesse was Nacho Varga, someone that's well-intentioned but gets caught up in the wrong group with the wrong people doing the wrong things. And no matter how hard he tries, he can't remove himself from the situations he's so deeply implanted in. But I don't think Nacho was as high level as Jesse Pinkman. Now, honestly, I do prefer Kim Wexler to Skylar White. They're kind of counterparts, the wife or at least the love interest throughout to the main character of each show. So I do think I prefer Kim and her relationship with Jimmy. Theirs was something that was super impactful to me throughout the show. She really changed as a result of Jimmy's corruptness, which was something that really surprised me. From very early on in the show, she struck me as a character that was set in her ways and, that wouldn't budge. But by the end of the show, she was doing shady things right alongside Jimmy. And, how their relationship led to the downfall of Howard Hamlin really made it interesting, and they were a great character pairing. So the characters there were great, and that's why this category is so hard, because I really love the characters in both of these shows. It's super strong and probably the strongest aspect of each of these shows. But along with my favorite two characters in this universe being in Breaking Bad, once again, Walt and Jesse, I think what really makes me opt to pick Breaking Bad as having the better characters is the characters that are seen a lot in both shows, other than Saul Goodman. I'm talking here about Gus and Mike primarily. To me, I just like the role that Gus plays in Breaking Bad a lot more. I know we dive deeper into his past and some of his motivations and his sexuality, things like that in Better Call Saul, and that's all interesting, but I just liked him as that main antagonist in Breaking Bad, and he's still an antagonist in Better Call Saul, but they definitely shine a different light on him, I feel. And then with Mike, personally, I was just a little let down with his storyline in Better Call Saul. I think it was just in the first season where, he's kind of uncovering things about his son's past, and they're showing him getting revenge on the people that did his son wrong. His son was a Philadelphia cop that died. I think following that was very interesting and told us a lot about Mike's character. But, the seasons where he's basically just working on the project for Gus, I didn't find it to be all that interesting, to be quite honest with you. That was one of the main letdowns from Better Call Saul for me. Not that it was awful television, but just compared to the rest of the show, I feel like it was a rather weak side plot. And I just feel like there could have been a more interesting situation potentially to place Mike's character in, to really study his character comprehensively. And yes, I'm being nitpicky, but with shows like this, I'm trying to make a video about which I think is better, and I do think the characters that went back and forth between both shows, they were shown in Breaking Bad, and then, and oddly enough, the two that were in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, not named Saul Goodman, Mike and Gus, actually do both die at the end of Breaking Bad, and I really thought the tragic ending to their storylines was really good. really well done at least. I liked the character of Mike and didn't really want him to die, and then the way Gus dies is pretty crazy as well. So I thought the conclusion to their characters and the fact that happens in Breaking Bad and is really well done really lifts up just my overall view on characters in Breaking Bad. So yeah, I give characters to Breaking Bad. It's really hard. I mean, the characters in Better Call Saul are so well acted. I forgot to mention Chuck McGill. That character is played and acted out tremendously as well, though he wasn't my favorite. I mean, he was so awful to Jimmy, and I think, in terms of Jimmy's psyche and breaking down, the psychological factors that go into why he acts how he does, I think, Chuck McGill probably has a lot to do with that. I just can't say that I like the characters more in Better Call Saul than in Breaking Bad. So as far as the plot and the storyline, I think here I'm going to get right to the point. I have to go Breaking Bad. I think it's one of the best and most creative plots of all time, with some of the most special characters within that plot, and it's just unbeatable to me, really, by any show. Better Call Saul, of course, plays into the same universe, and by the end of the show, a lot of the same topics and overlapping characters are interacting, and we're seeing a lot of the same business going down. But seeing Walt's journey from a mild-mannered chemistry teacher to one of the most powerful drug lords in the world and one of the most wanted men in America really just captivates me as a viewer. Next, I have the writing, and I think this is so even. Once again, Vince Gilligan is behind both of these shows. Not that every project he has ever or will ever do is going to be exactly even in terms of quality. I do think they're pretty even. I think that what makes these two of the best shows of all time is that the characters are so well written, so well fleshed out. They're a completely different person than they are, at the end of the show than they are at the start of the show. And that's one of my favorite things about television, watching characters grow over a long period of time. That's something that you don't get as much in movies. You get character progression, and, they learn things throughout the movie, and then they make a decision at the end, that shows a little change in them. But in TV, you can really follow a character and their progression for years, at least, within the universe of the television show. And to me, that's what makes it special. And the way these characters grow in both of these shows is unparalleled. And, if I'm looking at the main points to look at for writing, I mean, if I have to break down which character's journey is more tragic, Jimmy McGill or Walter White, I mean, it's almost impossible. But I do think that the writing carries Better Call Saul a little more, which might point to it being a little more impressive. So if I had to choose here, I'd probably give writing to Better Call Saul. But of course, Breaking Bad wouldn't be considered arguably the best show of all time if the writing wasn't amazing. I think that every main character in that show is written spectacularly as well. But there is something about the writing of Jimmy McGill's character that just makes it a little more poignant. And I don't want to contradict myself here at any point, so I want to clarify that overall, I think Jesse and Walter White are my favorite characters in this whole universe, but some of that has to do with the acting performance. Some of it has to do with just the events that take place with them in the show as well. That doesn't necessarily mean I think that they are definitely more well-written than Jimmy McGill. I think that there's a good argument to make that Jimmy, aka Saul Goodman, is the best written character in this whole universe. But that doesn't necessarily make him my personal favorite. So I just wanted to clarify that so that nobody can point to that in the comments as me contradicting myself. And the last category I have to look at here is which show's conclusion I prefer. So which show has the better ending. And though I love what they did in Better Call Saul, and I love how Jimmy finally did something out of the ordinary for him and owned up to his actions, in front of Kim in court, and talked about how he assisted Walter White, and Walter White never could have built the drug empire that he did without him. And of course, all the black and white stuff I talked about earlier, I thought that was super impressive. I think that Breaking Bad might have the best ending of any TV show ever. So to me, it's going to win this race. I mean, it's really just perfect, and it's everything you want in the ending of a TV show. It keeps you on your toes. It gives you some of the things you want, maybe some of the things you don't want, but that's what makes it so good. You don't always get what you want, and things aren't always a happy ending, but it felt appropriate for everything that transpired in the show for it to end the way it did. And once again, I love this video concept, but I knew that in trying to explain this, it would be razor thin, the difference between these two shows. And I really do love the ending of Better Call Saul. I've defended it to friends and family, and kind of the meaning behind it I think is so special. But Breaking Bad is just like the ultimate ending to a drama, and like it's just perfect. The main character, the way he goes out, but the things he does before he goes out is also so crucial. The tragedy of him coming back to his wife and admitting that he did it for himself, and not being able to see his son, only looking at him from around the corner of a building. There's just so much that goes in the conclusion of Breaking Bad that I think makes it a little better and a little more tragic, and altogether just a better viewing experience. So just to give some of my overall thoughts here, once again, like I said early in the video, Better Call Saul is more character driven. You're doing like deep dives into these characters, almost like character studies. And the deep dive into Jimmy McGill is one of the most interesting character journeys I've ever gone along, and I really appreciate it. I think that so many of the choices he made were avoidable, and that's what makes it so sad every time you see him, make the same mistake over and over again and keep choosing the wrong or immoral option. You say, Jimmy, like, you can be good. You've been given this opportunity. You can change for the better. And he just chooses not to over and over again. And it also makes it sad that he falls into the box that his brother Chuck always kind of put him in, as Slippin' Jimmy. And, as he keeps going further and further on in the show, we as the audience who are probably rooting for him to not fall into that mantra, he does. And he, his actions lead to that being an accurate description of him, unfortunately. Even though at times we see glimpses of him being able to find, that morality within himself and not falling into that character, eventually it catches up to him. He keeps making these bad decisions, and his brother ends up being right about him all along, which is exactly what we didn't want as an audience, which is also extremely tragic. And then Breaking Bad is just consistently the more intense viewing experience, which, if you love dramas, if you love thrill, if you love action, I think it is the better show. And, I'm not necessarily all for that stuff. I like character-driven storylines as well, but I do think that Breaking Bad touches on that so much while also giving you more of the action, a little bit better of an ending, a little bit more thrilling of an ending, and thrilling events throughout. Even the conclusions of season 3 and 4 were just so epic, and some of the best moments in TV history, I believe. Better Call Saul certainly has some of those too, and I feel like I could keep going back and forth here and arguing with myself about, how the one is impressive in an area, but so is the other. But ultimately, my choice is Breaking Bad. I think Breaking Bad is the better show. I have it winning in 3 of these 5 categories, and one of the categories Better Call Saul won in is writing, and I think that's honestly like dead even. But I did let it go to Better Call Saul just because I think Jimmy and his relationships might be better written than, Walt, for example, and his relationships slightly. But to sum it up, both shows are just so impressive and 2 of the best you're ever going to watch. If you haven't seen either one of them, I would suggest it. Sorry if I spoiled anything in this video, but I imagine you wouldn't watch a video this long anyway if you haven't seen one of them. But yeah, let me know which show you guys enjoy better. I see online that there's answers in both directions, and I talk about it with my family, and it's honestly about split there as well. A couple of my friends like Breaking Bad better. I think my mom and my sister like Breaking Bad better, but then my grandparents like Better Call Saul better, and I have a friend who likes Better Call Saul better. So, it's really going to be spread out, and it's just based on personal preference. Maybe you're a big prequel person and you like to, once you already know the fate of somebody, learn what led to their demise or what led to, their success, whatever the case may be. And in that case, maybe you would prefer Better Call Saul. But fact of the matter is, they're both legendary shows. I love both of them, near and dear to my heart, and it's 2 of the best viewing experiences I've ever had. So once again, drop a like on this video if you enjoyed my analysis of these 2 shows and which one is the better show, which I've deemed as Breaking Bad. Subscribe to my channel for more Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul content, along with many other shows, and I'm trying to get more movie reviews out as well. Thank you for watching, and until next time, this is Ty the TV Guy signing off.